set.
Do you need more room?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I am gonna call to order the Town of Rockland Board of Sewer Commissioners meeting. To order. Tonight is Thursday, February 27th, 2025. The time is now 5:36 p.m. We do have a quorum with all members in attendance. And this meeting is being recorded for playback as well. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from January 28th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second
The motion to approve. All those in favor?
it.
Aye. That's a vote. Thank you very much. Moving to the agenda, we have attorneys Chris Kenny and Bob Galvin here tonight to discuss regulatory matters for the sewer department, including the EPA administrative order and the local sewer moratorium. Attorneys Kenny and Galvin, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And I feel like I know, obviously we are like we're a new board. Really trying to, work to number one, make sure we're complying with, adhering to, and addressing the issues, the issues that have been brought forward really since 2006, and really how we address and move forward with all those issues now, and how we deal with, really trying to address all the matters in totality. And there's a bunch of, there's a bunch of interconnected parts, interconnected issues. A lot having to do with funding, and really, again, really for the edification of the board, the edification for the residents of the town as well. We wanted to invite you in to kind of give a level set of kind of where we're coming from, where we are, and how we really can continue working and move forward and addressing and moving forward as much as possible. So, welcome.
I can give a little bit of the history of, you
Sure.
mentioned it goes back to 2006, and I know Mr. Sullivan was previously on the board, on the sewer board. So as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, the town is currently under an EPA administrative order, and there was an initial order back in 2006, and back in 2006, the EPA modified the town's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, and they basically changed the permitted flow limitation from a 12-month rolling average of 2.5 million gallons per day to monthly average limitation of 2.5 million gallons per day. At that time, around the same time, they issued the admin order because at that time there were issues with going over the flow limitations and total suspended solid violations. So there was an initial admin order was back in 2006, somewhat similar to the current order. In 2007, the town submitted a plan for compliance, which included a sewer connection moratorium at that time, and they issued did a number of reports and to address the issues of why that administrative order was issued at the time, and given the flow violations. More recently, between the 5-year period of 2017 and 2022, the town exceeded the monthly average flow limitation out of that 5-year period, 32 out of the 60 months, so a little bit more than half. They went over the 2.5 million gallons on a monthly average limitation of that 2.5 million gallons. And as a result, it's kind of where we're at now, where I think the EPA ended up contacting the town, and we've been, the EPA has been very good to work with. They've been very reasonable. I've been working directly with the EPA attorney, Jeffrey Kopf. The other EPA representatives have also been working, and DEP have been working directly with the town as well. They were even before they issued the administrative order, they actually, gave us drafts, and they let us kind of, comment on the drafts. And they asked, for any input, or if, there's certain areas, if we needed type of amendments, and we did have a few minor amendments which they were amenable to. So throughout the process, they've been very helpful. They've always been open to communication, so I definitely thank them for that. So as a result, they issued the eminent order that the town is currently under, which was issued in effective as July 2022, and that supersedes the previous 2006 eminent order. And the overall purpose of the order, of course, is for the town to maintain compliance with its national pollutant discharge elimination system permit, and stay under that 2.5 million gallons per day on a monthly average. And the town as well has gotten, done similar to back in 2006, 2007, has done a lot of investigation, and I'm sure obviously the engineers, and we're not going to expand on this more, but a lot of it is a result of the I&I that's infiltrating the system, and so there's that significant amount of I&I, which seems like obviously is the main cause of the overages, especially during high rainfall events. So basically, in speaking with the EPA, they obviously just want to see steady, consistent progress in trying to reduce that I&I, make sure that the town's in compliance with their permit, and just see that kind of. They certainly understand financial constraints of towns, and they understand that it can't all be fixed at once, but it's certainly something that they just want to see that steady drop of the amounts. One issue that wasn't in the order was they didn't add in the order, there was no fine. Even though the town had gone over a little bit more than half in that 5-year period, there was no fine issued. But in speaking with the EPA attorney, he had indicated that most likely there would be a potential fine coming down the line, but it would be, the fine amount would be directly related to how the town moves forward with the order, complying with the order, and reducing make sure it's compliant with the permit. So we had one of the parts of the administrative order is every 6 months the town has got to submit a semi-annual report, which kind of dictates what's happened in the previous 6 months and kind of a plan for the next 6 months. So that's been happening. I think by now it's been almost 3 years. I think we've had 5 or 6 reports. The most recent one was just submitted in November, and that was for the previous period of April through October of 2024. The EPA, after that submission, they had contacted us and just had a few questions, wanted some clarifications on some of the things in the report. So we had a conference call, and with Mr. Taylor and I and some of the engineers, and just for clarification and on some of those. The good news was on that report, I think there was only 1 month out of the 6 that had gone over. I guess one of the pluses was the fall, there was not much the rainfall, so EPA kind of brought that up, like, it's not necessarily indicative of,
Kind of an artificial type of.
Exactly.
Yep.
I mean, it's great to have,
Yep,
but
yep.
at the same time, you see how much the rainfall is most likely, affecting. Obviously, is the I&I is the reason. The other thing we did too is obviously we made them aware of the current change in the structure of the sewer commission. You know, the previous commission had resigned.
Mhm.
Then we have an interim commission, and then, you know, per the Massachusetts statutory law, you all are interim commissioners
Mhm.
until the next election.
Yep.
So I think they certainly, you know, you know, they understood that there's been, you know, that there's a little bit of time for, you know, for you all to get up to speed and whatnot. The lack of having a superintendent prior to that. The other thing too is I know the town administrator, Doug Lapp, couldn't be here tonight, but Mr. Lapp was on the conference call, and he also went through and explained a number of the financial commitments that the town has made towards the sewer department, the sewer plant, given not only the issue of the permit, but the aging system, and that the system needs a lot of upgrades that's gonna cost a lot of money, and again, just, you know, revising the EPA, and I think of course they know that it's not something that can be done overnight, and you're talking about, you know, a lot of major upgrades that cost a lot of money. The other thing that's also, you know, I think you brought up and also is included in when we do the 6-month reports is that the previous commission did issue the moratorium back in July of 2021, and there's been a couple, I think there's been a couple revisions. I think the most recent revision maybe was October of 2023. Other than the semi-annual reports, there is one under the order. There is another kind of checkpoint that needs a report that needs to be submitted by the end. This is coming up in September 30th of 2025. The town needs to provide EPA with an additional alternatives report, which includes investigation of diversion of flows to potential other collection systems, and investigation of moving discharge point to an alternative water body. So that's other than the semi-annual, there were a number of previous kind of checkpoints too, that I think the towns hit all of those, and of course, we always can have every 6 months. In November and May, the semi-annual reports due. Other than those, that's the next one that would be due other than the semi-annual reports. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to.
Questions from the board? Mr. Ryan, the question I just have in terms of the moratorium that we have right now, did the EPA, did they require that, did they basically mandate the moratorium on us, or that, or is the moratorium something, that, the previous sewer commissioners, came up with as a method, to actually get our flow well below, the 2.5 million gallons a day? Yeah, was that actually required by the EPA?
No, so yeah, that's
Okay.
a great question, it's a great point to bring up, so yeah, that was, it was not a requirement, that was something that the previous commission, and back in, like I said, back in 2007, I think the commission at the time had done the same thing.
Yep.
And I don't believe it was a requirement back then either. But no, so that was not a requirement, that was the sewer commission based on, you know, same thing right after the EPA admin order, or actually, it was actually right before, because I think we knew it was coming.
Okay.
So, and I've had the direct talks with the EPA attorney about it, and, you know, again, they're really good to work with because they don't wanna micromanage the town, they kinda want the town to handle it, you know, they're like, yeah, they're there for, you know, anytime we, you know, wanna talk to them or have questions or, you know, seeking their commentary, they're definitely there. But they made it clear, like, hey, we want you all to kind of do what you need to do to fix the problem. And again, they just want to see that steady, you know, decrease of the flow and get into compliance with the permit. I mean, the one thing I think obviously the town doesn't want to do is go backwards, you know, I think.
No.
And I think at the last call, you know, again, we talked about the turnover and, you know, the sewer commission, and there's a little catching up, not catching up, but for you all to just get onboarded with this. But yeah, I think that's really the consistent theme is they wanna see the reduction in the amount. But again, going back to the money, they understand that the money issues a lot of times connection fees, when you have a moratorium, you're not gonna have connection fees or whatnot. So I think that's kinda, I guess that's the conundrum the town's in, is like, how do we deal with this where, you have the moratorium.
Yep.
You definitely, wanna identify as much I&I, get it out as soon as possible, it takes money, and connection, depending on how much you have without the connection fees, and the connection fees, it's that combination of like, okay, can we, that's something that, that's a constant issue that, the board needs to consider, certainly.
And I guess to all of that point, it's very clear in prior correspondence that the EPA has recognized that the town has a moratorium and has approved a moratorium as a way to manage their ability to comply. And they recognize that as a way to deal with flow. How much I guess is the order that we're under? How much of it I guess is related to the flow through the collection system, and how much are they focused on here in terms of the treatment plants as well?
You mean like the upgrades to the treatment plant?
Because they're two separate but interrelated
Yeah.
pieces, and I would imagine that the EPA is focused on the whole thing rather than
Right.
just addressing the I&I as an example, correct?
Yeah, I mean, they haven't, we've definitely explained to them, like, about this is the aging plant, and also that's the other thing that Mr. Rapp had told, explained that, there was already a number of upgrades, significant money spent on upgrades and whatnot.
I think the select board dedicated most, if not all, of the
ARPA
ARPA
money,
to specifically,
exactly.
the sewer.
Right. So yeah, no, that's a good point. I think they understand the big picture,
Okay.
but at the same time, I know, they're always looking at that. That's the first thing I think they probably look at in the reports, is like, where's your, monthly average, again, they just,
Okay.
I think they're always gonna be looking at that.
How often do they check that?
Well, we submit the semi-annual reports, so the one just went in November, so that would, was for April through October. And then obviously the next one report will be in May for November through May. I don't know, can they check regular, I don't know if there's that ability or.
No, they just a 6-month
Yeah.
semi-annual report.
Okay.
Which really brings us to the whole question about, obviously the ARPA money, we don't have that as a recurring revenue. So the question is, if we're going to continue to make investments, we have to have a type of recurring revenue, either built into the rate, or through, or through a connection fee system. And if we have a moratorium, how do, we have to make sure we're reconciling all this against each other, and we're making sure that in everything that we're doing, we're complying at the end of the day as well. So I guess Attorney Galvin, that might be a pretty good segue about how that really relates to different ongoing issues in land use issues as well.
Yep, so maybe I can bring you up to speed on an aspect of this that's not necessarily as technical as Chris's work. And Chris has done a tremendous job working with the EPA on compliance issues and managing the terms and conditions that they have. My involvement is significantly less in that aspect of it than it is to how it practically impacts some of the land use projects in town. And when I became first involved in sewer-related issues. A developer known as the Shingle Mill, which is the project, a 40B project up behind the Home Depot. Its initial team of developers had made, I think, a tentative arrangement to supply about $1.7 million to the town, to the sewer commission. The sewer commission was gonna use that money in order to identify a targeted goal of 11-to-1 reduction of inflow into the system in exchange for 11 times versus 1 times their total flow out. And there was an agreement. They used that when they made their initial application to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a comprehensive permit. They had received a project eligibility letter. Their original project in 2000 was 236 residential apartments and 2 5-story buildings, a clubhouse building, 300 parking spaces. Kind of dovetailing with sewer was water. Abington Rockland Joint Waterworks told them that they did not have the capacity to supply them any type of domestic water supply, but they would give them enough water for fire purpose protection.
Okay.
I know that there's some connection between water and sewer. That was the circumstances. So Shingle Mill did file in March of 2020. During the process, there was a change in the development team. We had COVID. There was some significant delays with the project. They ultimately modified the development after a couple of years down to 199 units. They eliminated their clubhouse building, they reduced the parking, they reconfigured some parking. They began a process of trying to determine whether they could locate a private water supply on the property. All the while hoping that at some point they could connect to the Rockland sewer system. They initially thought they had a deal and they could connect, but that all kind of got blown up when the moratoriums took place. The sewer commission might be aware that at some point we did issue a decision in October of '23 giving them an approval subject to conditions. There were of particular relevance to you, conditions that said that they could not build this project without a sewer connection, that there was no capacity now, and at some point when there was capacity, they'd like the ability to connect into the sewer treatment plant. They are periodically checking in with me as to whether this board is now ready to have a new discussion with them about connecting. I think they're fully prepared to offer the sewer commission a significant investment to try to find room in the system for them. They have agreed as a part of a settlement of an appeal they took that they would fall in line with wherever they are in line as of the date of a stipulation, which I believe was July of 2024. I'm sure there are other people that are looking to connect prior to that time, and anybody that had filed an application to connect before that time is in line ahead of Shingle Mill. When you have enough capacity to accept sewerage from 199 units, they're ready, willing, and able to pay, but they'll have to be renegotiated because the costs and expenses when they made their initial deal in 2019 were probably not anywhere near what those costs and expenses are now, and I know some of the fees and expenses have changed. The Zoning Board of Appeals refused to waive the fees and expenses for connections, and they've accepted that they'll pay whatever the fees are at the time they're allowed to connect, and or their permit was final, which would be July of 2024.
Just on that, again,
Yeah.
real quickly, so like in terms of that July of 2024, like is that like any rates in place at the time? Would they be the rates?
As of July of 2024.
Okay, thank you.
So their 40B projects are a little bit different from a conventional project in that when the permit is, usually when the permit is applied for, whatever fees were in force and effect at the time are kind of the fees that are binding.
Yep.
But as a part of the settlement in this case, they agreed that it would be whatever the fees were at the date, the time the permit became final,
Okay.
which was a distinct advantage to the town. Because if we were stuck with what it was way back when in 2019, and, you know, we're talking 2024.
Pre-inflation, pre a lot of things, yep.
So many things that I can't even quantify it, so. They're out there, they know that there was a change in the sewer commission. They wanna meet with you when you think it's possible. They think they're at some type of an advantage to somebody else because they have the ability to make a large payment in order to connect, and maybe others are not. I don't know. I don't know the answers to those questions. I don't know whether others have been required to reduce 11 to 1, but that is kind of the ACO rule that's in effect if you allow new connections, that any new connections have to provide an 11 to 1 reduction in I&I.
And that is the case with everyone, yeah,
Right.
under the rules.
Right. I'm tangentially aware what's been going on with the Southfield Redevelopment Authority. The master developer, you know, I know contributed some money to some smoke testing to help the sewer commission identify where there might be other leaks in the system or additional opportunities to recover sewer capacity. You know, town, because it's a sewer town, has to deal with this issue. And unfortunately, the town is not at its 10% threshold for subsidized housing, so, you know, projects like Shingle Mill and other projects can come online. I think the one project that I think the town is kind of focused on trying to getting online was the Holy Family senior development. Not a large generator of waste. The waste that was being generated from the school was probably multiple times more than the wastewater that would be generated from the 55 and older development. So I think that's a little bit distinct from this type of project, although it was technically a 40B project. It was definitely in line ahead of these guys. So, again, I know there's a wait list. I don't know what the order is. I haven't been involved in the development of that wait list.
Okay.
So I don't know where everybody falls in line or where Shingle Mill might come up next. You know, I think the local moratorium that was, I think, encouraged and blessed by the EPA, and I think they felt it was, at least at times, incrementally necessary as a part of its compliance with the EPA order. You know, has to be looked at on a periodic basis. And again, I don't know of any other 40B projects that are, you know, coming. You know, it's too early to tell what's gonna happen on the base with the Southfield Redevelopment Authority. I know they're looking for water and sewer capacity. I think they have some longer term goals of how they're gonna solve water and sewer capacity, but those aren't goals that are gonna be achieved, you know, in any immediate future in the next 1 or 2 years. I know they have negotiations ongoing with Weymouth. I think that the plan was always to try to develop less housing in Rockland and more commercial space. I've heard tangentially, I don't represent the master developer, I do represent the Southfield Redevelopment Authority. What I'm hearing is that they are interested in trying to find a way to jumpstart some commercial development in Rockland, which was always consistent with the plan. So I expect that they'll wanna meet with you too, about whether in exchange for I&I reductions that they would advance the cost of, whether there might be some capacity for them at some point. They have had periodic discussions with the town about other aspects of the development, other impacts. That's a big project, and at least Rockland's goal was always appeared to try to focus more on the commercial development. And, there are rumors as to you know, people that might go there. I don't know that there are any deals in place, but what I'm hearing is that they do have commercial people that are, might be looking to build sometime in the near future. You know, the biggest part of what's going on the base right now, just for your edification, and not that it's particularly relevant, is, you know, the base is contaminated with PFAS. Money that was owed to the Navy has been rediverted towards the design of a treatment plant for PFAS, which is nearing the final stages of its design. It's a very expensive proposition. The Navy's ultimately obligated to deal with that issue because it's a condition that they created over the years, and the Navy has been very good in allowing money that's owed to them to be applied to the cost of designing and implementing that PFAS solution, which is something that just can't be ignored, and its importance to the health and welfare of the future residents there and the existing residents in Rockland, Abington, and Weymouth can't be understated. It's a known problem that causes cancer. So that means water is probably, that will be potable, will be coming from someplace other than the base for the indefinite future. I can't even imagine that it would be at any time in our lifetimes that there would ever be domestic water there. It is possible to treat for PFAS, but the source is going to have to come from somewhere else. So, you know, from time to time, I used to discuss with Mr. Hessian whether a house here or there could connect. You know, I think if a house here connects and they're in line, you know, that's a balancing test you're all going to have to deal with. Should they skip ahead of a developer like Shingle Mill, where it's just one house and it's maybe 400 gallons? If it's a 4-bedroom house, or 440 gallons, I don't know. Those are issues you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
I haven't had any involvement in those discussions.
Attorney Gavin, from a housing point of view,
Yeah.
because of the housing laws,
Yeah.
fair housing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of fair housing, just as an example,
Yeah.
yeah, like, I mean, when it comes to that, yeah, I mean, like, it's very clear, like a single family, or a multifamily, like, it's a lot more different than 199 shingle mill unit. But for the purposes of, you know, fair housing or any other law for that example, does that differentiation exist in?
No, shingle mill can't, in the view of the law, can't be treated as any different than conventional housing. I mean, it is different. Functionally, it's a significant quantity, but it's can't be treated in a disparate way than single-family residential housing. It can't be put off longer. It doesn't have to be advanced any sooner. It just has to be treated the same way. And that's kind of the framework of the settlement with the zoning board of appeals. You know, zoning board didn't like the project. I don't think that's any secret to anybody. But the zoning board also understood that if it denied the project, you could lose control of the project. So what it tried to do was balance what was most important to the community and approve it with conditions that basically made them wait, forced them to develop their own private water supply. They can't deposit ever septic on that property because of its proximity to the Abington-Rockland Joint Waterworks reservoir and the Hingham Reservoir. They'll never be able to dispose of water there. So that's kind of the circumstances that we face. So those are hard questions for you all. I think, you know, Chris will give you good guidance, and Chris and I can complement one another. He's done really a terrific job with the EPA, and, you know, as it deals with the boots on the ground in specific situations, I'm happy to continue to help you. I'm sure there's other people that wanna meet with you to find out how they can get going too. But I guess you'll just have to see it as they come.
Yeah, like, Superintendent Taylor, is there anything you wanna add, or?
No, I mean,
you're the day-to-day, so.
Bob brings up a valid point in, you know, that there shouldn't be any differentiation between shingle mill and other hookups, but just so everybody's aware, there were other hookups within the last few years. So, under the previous administration, so, there was always the, you know, if you were under the 440 for a resident, they were adding a bedroom, those weren't allowed. You know, you had a couple little projects, the Manzella project was approved, I think that's on there, yeah, the Manzella project was approved. Dyer Street was approved, 365 Concord Street, which was before that previous board.
Was
those-
that was before the moratorium too, right?
Before the
365
last
Concord.
moratorium, correct. Yeah, that was originally under John Hoffman. And then Dyer Street was approved, but I&I fees were not applied to Dyer Street. I&I fees were not applied to 365 Concord Street or 320 Concord Street, which was approved. Manzella Court did pay partial I&I fees, but after that, the next project that was approved was the Holy Family School, which was ahead of the shingle mill, and that did have partial I&I fees involved with that.
Yeah.
So
You
that
know,
was the first one.
Something to keep on your radar screen too is the change in the law regarding accessory dwelling units. Okay, so,
Thanks for reminding.
I'm sorry to. I
We
mean,
talked about that the last meeting.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, there's gonna be some pressure on you coming soon, because these are allowed by right to allow, I mean, look, the town a few years back did change its zoning bylaw to allow some multifamily housing in 3 of its 4 residential zoning districts. And there really hasn't been a significant expansion of single-family to 2-family homes or 3-family homes. But the accessory dwelling unit bylaw is gonna allow them by right, so inevitably, you're gonna face someone proposing to do by right an accessory dwelling unit, probably not greater than 900 square feet, and they're gonna wanna connect, and you're gonna probably need some rules and regulations and how you deal with them. The Marshfield Board of Health just adopted some rules and regulations. The Department of Public Works, which administers its public sewerage system, has not, because the Board of Health did, but we may have to have more discussion about how you wanna deal with those. Are you gonna want, you know, a separate line in from the street? Are you gonna want them to be able to connect to the existing line? Things like that, you know.
And Tony, you got like my kind of initial reaction to that is how that all reconciles practically, you know, like with the with what we currently have as a moratorium.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I almost think that if somebody comes in and it's gonna require an expansion of their capacity, they have to get in line. You know, I hate
based on
to-
where we are right now today, yes.
Yeah, they're gonna have to get in line, and, you know, I think you gotta plow ahead looking for your permanent solutions, continue to do your I&I reductions, and you gotta come up with a solution in the end. You know, Chris and I both represent other communities
Mhm.
that are downstream of the sewer system, and periodically there's been an overflow, and it gets into the rivers, and the shellfish beds, you know, to the east do close, and every once in a while you'll hear that issue come up, and, you know, those are the issues that, you know, vex the EPA.
Mm-hmm.
So, the communities east of you all feel your pain, so, cause they're all got sewer treatment plants, they all have overflows, Cohasset has overflows,
Mm-hmm.
Situate has overflows, Marshfield will have an overflow. You know, not all of them are at full capacity, but that doesn't mean they don't have those inevitable storm events where, you know, bad things happen, so.
Yeah, like not to, you know, like I mean, like I think, I mean, like I don't want to call this process like a listening tour, but that's really what it is. I mean, like foundationally, and you know, like a big, yeah. I mean, when we get to the I&I discussion with Weston and Sampson, like a big, I think one of the big questions is, what's kind of a baseline flow, like without any I&I issues, and then you know how does that relate to? I mean, obviously, in terms of the permitting, you know, the permitting doesn't really differentiate at all, you know, between that. But it's just helpful, I mean, when we're, especially to understand what our baseline is, you know, like as an instructor tool to let us know really, what we can do and how we can manage the I&I issue as well.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but one of the bigger items out of that EPA meeting was our rehabilitation of the I&I. They need us to be a little bit more proactive. I know they did go after the original SSES study by AECOM, all that was remediated, but they've also identified other areas. There was 119,000 gallons that was referenced, 114,000 gallons. So, you know, when we were in that, with that meeting with EPA, we did tell them, we have a little under $1 million committed for that first set of 119 for this early summer, late spring, early summer. So we have a contract going out for that one, and then we're going right after that 114. So, but that was one of the bigger things, because it was all well and good, we had all the smoke testing done, and we quantified all that, but they wanna see that rehabilitation work being done.
Yeah.
And that's where we're stepping into moving forward. So you're gonna see a lot of that moving forward. I mean, that's on my agenda to talk about even further, but that was one of the bigger things that we got out of that meeting moving forward with them.
Can I ask a question? Illegal connections to the, you know, system. I know that was a topic of discussion, I don't know what ever happened, but, you know, there are people that are dumping water into the system that's causing, at least contributing to some of the problems that we have. And I don't know what the prior commission did to stop that. There was discussion about something like that happening, but I don't know whether I don't know how far it got.
Those are some of the areas that were identified for just straight inflow sump pump. So there is
Some pumps being.
sump pump
connected into the
EMSD
system.
program
Yeah.
where you're gonna look at doing some of those connections, working with residents on those connections, and how we can redirect those
Yeah.
legal
I mean, they could
connections.
put them into dry wells in their own
Correct.
properties and keep
Yeah.
it out of the sewer system.
Right, and I brought it up multiple times, we have to be very careful on where we do those areas, because everybody knows this side of town is the lower area, it's essentially a bowl, that's why our discharge area is right here on the lower part. So we need to go more upflow for those connections, we couldn't do it, say, Wyman's Field, because those illegal connections or drainage and sewer, that sewer is working as a secondary drainage source also, so if you completely clog those up,
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna go somewhere else, which
Yeah.
would be into the home, so we have to be, it's gotta be very careful on where we take those sections, but those areas have been identified, and those are some of the areas in that 114,000 gallon amount, so there are, again, that's a lot of, you know, that's committed, you know, this is close to $1 million worth of work over the
Yeah.
next year,
Yeah.
so, and that's what they wanna see.
Yeah.
Before anything.
Yeah. I mean, you do have people that are willing to pay, and that money could be used to make improvements to the system, and you probably have to find that happy balance at some point.
No, I mean, like, it makes sense, I mean, as I mentioned, my take, it just as one of three, is I wanna, really make sure we have a baseline. You know, we do have planned funded improvements. Ideally, I like to see the results, this is just my take, but I like to really see the results of those planned funded improvements, what exactly we're able to accomplish and measure from them, and then maybe kind of take an inventory and look at where we are. I mean, that's kind of my general take right now, to see those through. But again, I mean, we invited everyone here. We invited Weston and Sampson, to our next meeting to really make sure we're diving into all the things we need to be diving into right now.
Well, Kevin and Adam are gonna go over what we have committed at the wastewater treatment plant, which is significant.
Yep.
You're looking at $32 million plus.
Yep.
And then you're looking at the I&I, and the EPA wants to see both those in a balance. You know, they wanna see us going after that proactively in the I&I, and they also wanna see us doing the wastewater treatment plants. That's a significant investment
Mhm.
on the town, it's $32 million. So, and then the I&I, so.
Any members of the board?
I don't have any
Those
actually other questions,
questions?
I appreciate this updates and explanation, I really do.
And I'm sure this will be the beginning of a very ongoing dialogue, so
Absolutely.
thank you both.
Sure.
Thank you.
Is it okay if, I excuse us?
Yeah.
Yes, that's why I kind of segued the way I did.
On the front end.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks for having us.
thanks, guys.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, would I be able to call like a 2-minute recess really quick?
Recess?
Yeah, like 2 minutes, if
You can
that's
do
okay.
what you want, right?
Okay, thank you. I just have to grab something.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Dave. Good to see you.
Let's see.
Biannual, it's an annual report.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Next up on the agenda, we have Kevin Olson and Adam Higgins here from Right Pierce. Some of you gentlemen?
Yep.
Okay, well,
Thanks for
welcome
having
and
us.
thank you. So I think you kind of got the sense, the tenor of kind of what we're trying to do, what we're trying to learn and understand, so.
Yep.
I'll leave it to you gentlemen to kind of take it away and
Sure. I
bring
appreciate
it up
that.
to speed.
It's good to listen in on that. So, I am Kevin Olson from Red Pierce. With me tonight,
Ryan Wagner, right here.
Good meeting.
and this is Adam Higgins, right here from Red Pierce. So, we're pretty much the lead team, technically the project manager. These guys are the lead engineers, if you will. So, we actually have an 8-page agenda, but don't fret. We're not gonna go through in painstaking detail. We'll try and hit the highlights. You guys already, well, hopefully, a lot of people have copies of it. I think you guys got maybe a sneak peek of it before, and certainly can take away. So we'll try and again hit the important points. We know part of tonight is a little bit of get to know you with the, as the sewer commission's transition over the last handful. So again, thanks for having us. The first item.
I'm sorry. Mind if I turn the other light on so it's a little brighter? Thank you.
So, on the agenda, I think we can skip past the communications and contact information. We have a few attachments at the end of the agenda. One of them is that contact list. We, of course, have been working closely with the town, also with Veolia, with Megan and others, for a handful of years here. So, moving down, just real quick, Dave, we chatted a little bit today. We understand that for the OPM owner's project manager, that you have some proposals in hand that are under consideration now. So only reason why we've kind of kept in touch with Dave and Mr. Lapp and others is to, is on the treatment plant upgrade where we're in preliminary design now, you could consider us as the designer. And we would work closely with whomever the town chooses to bring on as the OPM. So, we've been thinking about that, planning for that, and, hopefully the schedule will allow them to kind of roll in seamlessly with where we are. A little bit of background, Dave, you asked us, just to give a quick overview. Again, I'm not gonna go through a lot of painstaking detail, but we've been working with the town for about 5 years. Started off, and most of our work has been focused right here at the plant. So it's been 5 years. We started off and did a real, I guess, deep dive, if you will, at the treatment plant. Looked at everything with our, assessment and evaluation. And of, the result of that was there is a lot of work that needs to happen. Dave, you touched on it earlier, for a variety of reasons, whether it's aging equipment, meeting permit, that sort of thing. We followed that up by completing, it's called the CWMP, Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan, where that pulled in the work that we had done at the plant, but it also reached out into the collection system, the pump stations, a number of other things. We also worked, Adam and I, closely with the town when the ACO came out and the NIFTY's permit, renewal came out. So there was a lot of things happening there that we also offered some assistance and guidance on. Coming out of that, the early planning was there's a lot of work to be done. we were pretty confident, and we heard from the town that the town didn't wanna tackle that as one really big project. There's a lot of other things going on, you just talked about it, right? You got work in the collection system, so how do you maybe break that into some smaller parts? So, because the new NIPD's permit has a total phosphorus limit, one of the things we were thinking initially was that phase one of the treatment plant upgrades would focus on that. So we got going a little bit on that, did some field investigative work and the like. And then we actually kind of paused a little bit, working with the town and Veolia, listening a lot to Veolia, who contract operates the plant, where they were doing such a good job, and still are, of operating the plant, that they're largely meeting total phosphorus via just operational strategies, some chemical precipitation. So again, I don't want to get too much into the weeds on it, but the secondary treatment system and the electrical system really need some work. So we kind of shifted gears a little bit and pushed that one aside and pulled in, and Adam's gonna talk to you a little bit more about, you know, where we are on that project. So just wanted to kind of paint the overall big picture for you. So right now, phase one is secondary treatment upgrades as well as electrical system upgrades. Item 5 in the agenda, a little bit of the chronology, I think I've already touched on a fair amount of that already. As part of that original first phase tertiary phosphorus assessment, we did make a lot of decisions, and I just want to make it clear that a lot of that early work, even though we've pivoted, will still count towards that future work. So it wasn't time and effort wasted, so that's good. And some of the, you know, field work that was completed, again, counts towards the project we're doing now, or will count towards an eventual tertiary phosphorus upgrade. So, that being said, I think I can hand it off to Adam.
Sure. So as Kevin mentioned, phase one of this overall upgrade will be secondary treatment and electrical. The electrical system is 40 plus years old. If you go into your dedicated electrical rooms and you look at the equipment, it's very old, it's obsolete, can't get parts for it anymore, needs an overhaul. Also the main service coming in and some of the associated equipment that needs to be replaced. So that's kind of half of this overall project. The second part is secondary treatment, which is the tanks out here that have the brown water in them essentially. Those are your aeration basins with your biological treatment. And then the secondary clarifiers where that stuff settles out and gets returned. The mechanical surface aerators in there, that's how oxygen gets into the wastewater so that the bugs can basically reproduce, get rid of the BUD and TSS, meet permit. Those things are very old and very tired, and if those fail, you have a much bigger problem than if tertiary phosphorus is failing. So part of the pivot there was, this is a more important issue, more critical to address now. So replacing that aeration system, basically we'll take those equipment out, we'll put in new, more efficient equipment. Instead of the surface aerator that basically splashes the top of the water, we'll have the mixer go down to the bottom, much more efficient in terms of oxygen transferring up through the water column. Part of that mixer going down to the bottom is there's no surface oxygen getting in, so we need a blower system to provide oxygen down to the bottom, and then it gets distributed up. So blowers and mixer aerators, they're called, will be going in. The blowers need a new home. There's no space for them out there now, so we're going to build a new building to put the blowers in and all that new electrical equipment. That new building is going to sit out here next to the digester building, just to the left of it. Part of the aeration system is the controls for it. So there'll be new instrumentation for that. There's going to be valves and piping and stuff like that to support those systems. One of the most important things with oxygen transfer is the depth of the water. You guys have pretty shallow tanks here, so we're actually going to raise the water level up. One, for better oxygen transfer, and two, to support more hydraulic capacity in the future. secondary clarifiers, again, those circular tanks, just over here to the south. We're gonna replace the mechanisms in those. Those are original to the mid-80s, so very old. We're also gonna install, they're called Stamford or density current baffles. Basically, it's a 45-degree plastic plate that goes around the whole tank, and as sludge comes up, gets redirected back down, so it's not going out over the top and into your effluent. So it just makes things a little more efficient. And then an algae brush system, so especially in the summertime when you have a lot of sunlight, warm temperatures, you get a bunch of algae growth in your launder, and the algae brush basically goes around and knocks that stuff off. Less maintenance for
We
Veolia
just
to,
had ours. Just cleaned it today.
because otherwise you put a person down in the tank and they brush it off, scrub it off, and it's not a fun job. As I mentioned, the new building will have one half of it will be for the blowers, the other half of it will be for the electrical equipment. And again, part of that electrical work will be the new service coming in, a new automatic transfer switch, running basically conduit and wire to this building and some of the old equipment, so. This project will not address any future total nitrogen limit that we are expecting to come in a future permit. Not for at least 5 years, because you just got a new one. So important to keep that in mind. We are sizing the electrical equipment with those improvements in mind, but no other improvements to address that right now.
But the aeration and secondary improvements that we are doing are in keeping with the plan for
Yes.
the total nitrogen improvements that are gonna, or designs that are gonna be coming in the future.
Basically part one of two that we expect to happen eventually. Ryan, do you wanna go over the kind of project status? Quickly jump through that.
So we've had several subcontractors, engaged, through the beginning of this contract and previous contract. We did, a Matterport scan, which is like, they come with a 3D camera that helps limit our site visits here and, gives good information to, the design. We had a hazardous material survey of, for lead paint, asbestos, PCBs done in the areas where we anticipate doing some work under this contract, so that we can include that in the contract documents. We do have some time set up with the surveyor for some supplemental survey, if it becomes necessary. That might come down the line, not done just yet. And then we had where the new building's going to be going. We did geotechnical work. We had Novus come out and do boring, so we have boring logs so we can look at a few different things, see what the existing soils are out there, and use it for design of our foundations and things of that nature. We also are working with SAR, who is going to be our electrical and instrumentation contractor or designer on this project.
And they were on site today earlier with Adam.
Yep.
Any questions on the scope of the work before we kind of go to an update of what's been done
I have
on the
one
design?
thing. So you guys ended up boring
Mhm.
for the tertiary. Do you have to rebore, or is that, do you have to redo it for the second phase? Everything's set, right? We won't, the
Well,
town won't have to pay extra?
The
to
the
have
borings that
done?
we did here,
Yeah.
are good for that particular area, that area. So if there's any work that turns out to be done in a different area of the site, we'll have to do some investigations for that
So the
particular.
tertiary is done?
The tertiary is
Okay,
done,
so
as long as
the town
that,
will not have to
that,
pay
that
extra to
location
have that
remains,
redone.
yes.
Okay.
So the work that was done under the tertiary investigations is right.
Okay.
That doesn't change much. We even use.
Soil's not gonna change much.
It's not gonna change. We use the historical borings from when we did the plant originally too to supplement this. Some of this comes
Not
into
enough.
also understanding, all right, what's out in the soil right now? So are there any contaminants in the soil that will have to be addressed during construction or dealt with by the contractor and stormwater permits and things of that nature?
One other thing, just quick to note, Adam had mentioned about total nitrogen and potential future limit there. The one thing that the phase one upgrade also does not do at the treatment plant is increase the flow capacity. So that's an important thing. We've talked about that quite a bit, but we wanna make sure that folks understand that. It's, you know, and we understand that you guys are trying, per previous discussions, trying to manage connections, trying to reduce II in the collection system, so just wanna make sure you know that.
This is just improving the process of what permit goes out.
But, I will say that we are doing hydraulic review of the entire plant for both what the peak will be now versus what the anticipated future design peak will be, once there are upgrades in place to allow for more flow. So that's, future work, upgrading the influent pump station, area grit, things of that nature that are pushed down the way, where that work needs to be done to go from 6 to 7 MGD. But what we are doing is incorporating and looking at how the increased flows that make sure that everything that we're doing is compatible with that future desire.
Always have to keep that look forward in mind, so total nitrogen is one of them, capacity is another one. So
And
we're gonna-
electrical capacity for
That,
whatever additional equipment we may need.
Yep. So so process design, I guess we're in preliminary design right now. I don't know, Adam, if you wanna
Sure.
jump back in here and,
Yeah, so for preliminary design, it's basically when we figure out everything that the final project's gonna be. We have an idea of things we wanna do, but we haven't really delved into the details yet. So for flows and loads, which is basically what is coming into the facility, that affects how big the blower needs to be, for example, because we need to know how much oxygen needs to be provided to treat the BOD. So we reviewed that for the 2021 assessment, and we had an idea of where we think the town's gonna go in the next 20 years for growth. We checked those numbers against the last 4 years of data since that report was published, just to make sure, you know, those are still, we're well below that 20-year mark, and we are, so that's been completed. Facility codes and nomenclature, basically just making sure everyone's on the same page for naming conventions. That's been completed, Veolia is reviewing it. Equipment list, so both what's already in place at the facility and what we're gonna add on, so we can make sure that our electrical systems handle that full equipment. NFPA 820, which is the fire code, for every building and unit process, like all the tanks. We need to review that to make sure there's no code issues that we're gonna run into during construction. That's been completed. Hydraulic profile, as Ryan mentioned, that's been completed. And then the process modeling, which is basically we build the plant in a simulation software and make sure everything's gonna work out. That's been completed, and the blower sizings has been completed.
Ryan, anything else to highlight or add? You know, if you wanted to cheat and look at the last 2 pages, you don't have to spend a lot of time, but you can do it tonight, maybe before you go to bed. But we're still working through the layouts of, as Adam said, the new blower and electrical building there. So there's, again, some early layouts there. We think we've dialed it in terms of size and location. We think we have a nice snug fit there, so we're pleased with that.
So all of those items that are listed under Part 7B will basically go into their own report sections or memorandums that will be in the appendix of the overall report when preliminary design is complete. We will probably give at least the secondary treatment memo and hydraulic memo over to you guys for an early review before we put it in the PDR, so that should be coming up soon.
Some nice light reading.
And then, I guess for the rest of preliminary design, which is really getting our building services, so structural engineers, architects, electrical and instrumentation, and HVAC and plumbing, all those engineers will be basically designing the building and the support systems for it, and some other smaller work in the tanks and stuff like that we have. They're getting geared up right now as we speak, and the plan is to basically issue the preliminary design report in May. So hopefully the OPM is on board and caught up to speed, and they'll be able to jump in and review that with you guys.
Yeah, so we adjusted our schedule just a little bit, partly to, as I said earlier, and Adam just said to dovetail in with the OPM, let them, get their feet on the ground with the town, but we think it'll work out. And the plan, and you'll hear in a minute here, we're gonna get to our last page of the agenda, is to get rolling right into final design too, so, things are gonna continue to crank up, if you will. So page 5 of 8, I think, is going to be our last page, but another quick opportunity here, if anybody has something they're dying to say or ask, okay. Schedule, usually people are pretty interested in the schedule as well. Couple of things, the plan is to meet the current SRF loan cycle, state revolving fund, state funding, it's for the most part a low interest loan. In your project, they just issued the intended use plan, better known as the IUP, they being DEP at the end of January, and your project made the intended use plan, yay, so that's a good thing. But what that means is we have to kind of follow, that dictates schedule a little bit, and there's certain milestones that you have to meet, so. This is a much abbreviated version of our overall schedule, but you can see, we just mentioned, complete preliminary design in May, and any luck, roll right into final design starting in June. Everything really builds up to submitting the SRF loan application with whatever percent complete the plans and specs are, the final design plans and specs are, by October 15th. So we have some work to do. And then the last real, then a bunch of things happen. DEP reviews it, we wrap things up, we complete the permitting, but ultimately then you have to get it out to bid. And hopefully, knock on wood, you have a good bid and you can get a contractor that's gonna actually do the work here to make the upgrades on board by June 30th of next year. So there's a lot of variables between now and then, but that's the plan. So again, Dave, you adjusted the schedule, but you've heard that before, so we still have those end milestones in sight. We haven't played with those. Project cost is the last item. Just real quick, and we continue to communicate with Mr. Lapp. The town has, I know there was some discussion earlier, the town has obviously set aside some funding, I know, to get things rolling, some of the ARPA funding, a year or more ago. But our total project cost estimate is 35 million. You mentioned 32 and a half. That's really handles the, if you take the design part of it out, so. But I know there was also some funding appropriated, I think it was about a year ago, 12 million, 12 and a half.
12 and a half.
Yep, so we got that number correct. So the balance, okay, so we don't have quite, that doesn't get us to there, Kevin. Again, Mr. Lapp is well aware, as maybe plenty of folks here are aware, that there might very well be an article coming up for annual town meeting. Because if you want to stay on that SRF loan funding schedule, the town would have to certify, if you will, the DEP, that you have all the funding in place by June 30th of this year. So you gotta fill that rest of that, appropriate the rest of that funding. And we understand that there's other things going on in town, and so our job is just to kind of do the engineering and communicate on what the schedule and what the funding needs might be. We have done some cash flow updates, and Dave, maybe that's more for you. At any point, if you or Doug Lapp want an update, just give a holler, and happy to do that. I think I've hit the SRF loan items pretty well. One item just for folks, some may or may not know this, but in Massachusetts, the design phase is not eligible. So the work that you have us doing right now in design is not eligible for SRF loan funding. It doesn't become eligible until you get to bidding and construction phase engineering services. Naturally, the contractor that's gonna do the work, that's really the larger chunk of money that you need.
Just a quick question on that, if I could.
Yep.
We have the town authorization of the $12.5 million in bonds already. How much is the SRF expected to or potentially cover of that?
So we have right now appropriated 1.5 for the preliminary design to get us into some of the design aspect. You have that 12.5, which was done in 2024.
Yep.
You have another 21.5 that we will have appropriated at this town meeting to
Okay.
move forward, so we meet the guidelines with that. So, and there still will be some ARPA money, and there is also some development money for that design.
What is the how does how does the SRF come into play then? With the
Kevin can probably speak better on it than us. We just needed to come up with that appropriation, which is that capital, which went to capital
Yep.
plan, which will be on for a town article this spring.
Yeah, so without getting into all the details, but, you know, so if the town does vote up that additional 21-ish million, and then they certify that by June 30th,
Yep.
then you'll stay on the intended use plan, so that what that tells DEP is you guys are moving forward. Some communities might make the intended use plan and then they don't vote up the money, so they'll come off of that plan and they'll just deal with it some other way. So what would then happen is you would have to get the SRF loan application submitted by October 15th with plans and specs, they review it, all of that ultimately rolls into DEP issuing a project approval certificate, and, you know, an authorization to bid the project, so there's a number of steps that would happen, but you guys, as part of that process, so later this year and early into next year, you guys would really finalize a loan, if you will, you know, with the state, and then, you know, so then that would kick in once you get into, you know, next phases, sometime early next year, well, yeah, spring next year.
I have that also just to talk about on my update, but that's through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund regarding the SRF loan, so.
And I guess the $12.5 million in bonds that encompasses an SRF loan or bond, correct?
That's a bond, yes.
Okay.
That was
Okay, that makes sense,
appropriated
okay.
in 24.
Okay. No, thank you.
Yeah, there's a number of financing things that need to happen
Yep.
with, you know, short-term borrowing, and
Yep.
then once you roll in, so that usually gets worked out,
Yep,
but.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
One other just quick note on funding, you'll see towards the bottom of the page, you know, we have been, one of the things we've been doing over the last couple of years is trying to find other pots of gold, if you will, for the town, and there, ARPA has been one we've talked about, and, right now with the new administration, some things are in a little bit of limbo, as we all know, so we'll see how that plays out, but we have been, you know, working with the old commission at the
Yeah.
time to try and find other, you know, so Dave, I don't know if you wanna say anything there, but we still continue to look
Okay.
to find grant, you know, which is free money,
Right.
so we're still trying.
Yeah, and to that point, the prior board was working through, I think, a community project funding. Yeah, like, is that still a, does that remain an opportunity still, or is that kind of unknown at this point?
That's a really good question, we don't have an answer for you. We have Jess Richard is the head of our funding financing group, and I've been talking with her, again, with the current administration, things are a little bit in limbo, so, we'll follow up with you on that. That's one item that we're kind of digging back into, but
Makes sense.
I mean, we tried, and
Yeah.
the town was working with your reps to
Yeah.
try and leverage as best you could, so.
There's a lot of interest from congressional side of things, so.
Correct, yep. So, we're gonna
Thank you.
revisit that. So that was a lot, and we tried to.
I appreciate it though.
Yeah.
Whittle it down to the high points, but, you know, we're available to answer questions or field
Happy
notes.
to-
So I'll take it up now for one day, I'll definitely come and take a look at the plan.
Yeah, happy to come down and walk through with Megan or someone else from Veolia and do a plant tour to go through what the
Yeah,
actual
if you
overall
had a chance,
trees are.
isn't, sorry, Adam, has the new commissioners, have you guys had a chance to get through the plant?
I've not had a chance to go through the plan yet, so.
You've been through it a few times, Walter, haven't you?
Yeah, I did a few years ago as well.
Nice.
So,
So we do, just tentatively, have Wright Pierce coming in every, besides our regular phone calls and our regular meetings, but we do have them tentatively scheduled for every 2 months.
okay.
So their next meeting would be in April, but that accommodates everybody, so. And then at that point, we'll have a better understanding where we are with the OPM.
Yeah, that should,
And
yeah,
also-
thank you for your
Right,
kind of patience with that, we're
yeah.
excited and anxious.
We're gonna try to make it after the town meeting,
Okay.
I mean, right before the town meeting, and so.
Well, we'll be reviewing, you know, preliminary design at that point, so the timing should be pretty good.
Right. Perfect.
Well, thank you guys again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thanks, Ryan.
appreciate it, thank you, look forward to working with you.
Yep, and Dave, I think you said you don't need us to stay on?
You don't need to stay, no.
Well, with that, have a good night, everybody.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Moving through, administrative update.
That's me. Alright. So, we send out the renewal letter for, I'm gonna give them a minute to see the
Yeah,
diagram.
I know what it's about, yeah, thank you, good meeting.
Good night.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. Yeah, so it's 21 home, 21 No, because this is gonna be in SRF long.
I can probably move forward with the drain layers, cause David's
Yeah,
familiar with them.
Okay,
So I had 4 drain layer applications, renewals. And if I can go through them, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
June 1 approval. The first one is Sealand Corporation. They paid all of their fees, supplied all of their paperwork, their new insurance. So I have Sealand Corporation out of Pembroke. I have DS Benoit Corporation out of Rockland. Elm Company Excavation and Contracting, they are in Abington. And Alpha Excavation Inc. And all of them have been drain layers at least twice in Rockland, and they supplied all of the fees and correct paperwork, if you could approve those 4.
I will entertain a motion to approve the renewals as proposed.
I'll second that.
I'll make the motion.
Motion, seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Sorry, trying to do both.
Alright.
Alright,
Take your time.
so there's that. The next item was well water customers, so we have customers that are on town sewer, but they use their own well water. So once a year I send them a letter, they send me in a picture of their meter, so I can check it against last year's photo, make sure it's the same meter, and then I can, figure out the consumption and bill them appropriately. Some people don't respond, and so since I've been here, since 2019, I don't know when this came into play, but we say to them, if you don't supply a reading, we'll charge you $525. So it's not really enough money. We don't typically charge, only there are 2 or 3 people that we charge. But it's really not enough money to cover what some of the bills are now. So I had a gentleman call up and said to me, you know, I didn't used to give you my reading, and now I did, and you used to charge me $525, and now you're charging me $870, and that's what I get for being a good Samaritan. So he has a good point, and I've thought of it before, so I'm asking the board if you consider raising that fee amount to $1,000, which is about $250 per quarter. It's way over the minimum for our regular sewer bill, but it's really not to penalize people, but just to force them to give us the readings so we can actually know what flow we're looking at as well as billing them.
And how many?
We have about, I wanna say 25 clients and most residents, and most of them do supply the readings. There were 2 or 3 that don't. And also I have their contact information now, so people who don't respond, I do reach out to them, talk to them on the phone, send them an email. Sometimes they forget, or they went to Florida and they get someone else to do it. So we're not trying to penalize people, we're just trying to make them respond. Yeah.
Do we have any like type of existing policy that really like enumerates what the dollar amount is, or we just have always traditionally done it by vote of a board, we've updated the number without having
It's
a
been-
policy to back it up?
It's been updated by the board previously, and it was $525.
When was the last time we updated it?
I don't know, because for the last 5.5 years, it's been $525.
Yeah, like I'm not,
But with all the rate increases, like
Oh,
525 was
yes.
fine back then, but
Hasn't
now,
been keeping up.
and like this gentleman has a point, he says, you know, if I didn't give you my reading, I'd be paying 525, but now I have to pay for what I really used, and everybody should be paying for what they really use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we can encourage people to supply that reading,
Yeah, I guess my point is like I don't actually disagree with updating it at all. I mean, like like people, our residents need to be responsive. But I'm just wondering, rather than like a vote that is done periodically, like if we had, as a board, as a department, had a policy that we can actually point back to. It's just an open-ended question. I'm asking about having a policy in place that really drives the, to back up the whole.
How would a policy,
Practice.
how would a policy address inflation rates in,
Well, no, a policy could just be updated every year too.
You
Okay.
you could just say, this month we.
on the
look
agenda,
at- yeah.
right, on the
Yeah.
agenda every January first, whatever, the first meeting in January, we decide the rates every year. It could be as simple as that, I don't know.
so most of the rates, get updated in July for the new fiscal year. We have had a couple of instances where we had an interim raise in January just to keep up, because before we had the professional rate study, we were calling around other towns and, you know, using different ways to come up with a rate increase. It didn't really work out well, so
Mhm.
once we had the professional rate study, all of the rates are being raised on July 1st, like they traditionally were before.
Okay.
So I think if you were gonna look at that, you'd probably wanna look at it in July as well. But like I said,
Or in
this
June, get ready
affects,
for July.
right, in June for July. This affects 3 people out of 25, basically, just to try and get them to
Mhm.
supply the readings.
And keep in mind, the rates are fixed at a 10% increase for the next 7 years.
So we have to keep up with it.
Are those fixed, are those?
That's in
stone?
order, that was done by the rate study, in the previous board, to accommodate the treatment plan upgrades and the I&I work.
I mean,
So-
realistically, at 10 years, 7 years at 10% apiece, you're doubling everybody's rate in that 7 years.
It's 8 years, cause we're already.
But, okay, but you talk about doubling their rate
Yeah,
at that point.
it's 10% a year, and then it drops down.
I mean,
Not
it's a-
drops down, but drops the rate down.
Right, no, it's a significant,
Yeah, it is
rate over the
significant.
next,
For people that are budgeting and
right,
older people, that's a lot, over 8 years.
right, you're gonna go from a minimum of 70 over 8 years, probably to, if I had to guess, about 135, 140, and by the time they're done, so it's gonna double it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the board's not, we're not here, we shouldn't be here day to day, but in terms of, Dave has that interim superintendent.
It's just
I mean-
on top of the regular.
Yeah, I mean, choosing between a policy and
It's
just a vote is, I mean, I don't have any idea what we have and don't have in terms of
Right.
rates, policies, whatever, if we're just,
Well,
if we've operated by vote, so I mean, I'm kind of ambivalent, something tells me it'd be nice to have a policy, but if we don't have that underpinning structure to begin with, what good would the policy be if we've always just operated based on votes?
Well, you could
That's
have,
what I'm,
you could do 1 month a year where you wanna, if you update your policy.
Review all the rates.
Right, you could do it in, like Matt said, you could do it in June.
Right, I just picked
Take
January as
the-
an arbitrary
An
date.
early June meeting for any changes, do you know what I mean? Like, a lot of boards will do that.
so we actually have commission policies then.
I mean,
Okay, so
it's really broad. I don't know
we
if
don't
you
actually
have
have a
the
policy
official
for
policy
this.
for
I
this.
think what happens is every
Yeah.
once in a while, when this number doesn't make sense,
It's just
The
updated by way of a
superintendent-
vote.
yeah, would bring it to the table for a vote. The other thing is if you review the rates in June, there's really not enough time to send out the bill to everyone with a warning that the rate is going up, and
That's a
we've
good
run
point.
into this. So you
Because it's
wanna
usually
go
like that.
4 months before,
Yep.
so that on each bill, because even though everyone gets a quarterly bill, we bill every month. Some people get billed the first month of the quarter, some the second, and some the
Oh,
third.
okay.
So we have 12 billing
Wow, so-
cycles.
Yep.
In order to let everyone know that a rate increase is coming at them, you would need to vote 4 months prior, so that I can put it on the 3 bills
Yeah,
leading
this
up to
year,
the end of the year.
I mean, we're basically there anyway.
This is where we're at right now, this is
You're right
4 months
now.
for June.
That's what she's looking for,
Right.
because
But
when she
that's
came
why-
on, it was already a 525 value.
Correct.
So she's just looking for, like she said, it's a small, you're looking at 3 people out of 25.
And this
Mm,
won't
this is
even
fair.
affect them until next January, because I only bill well water people once a year. Cause they have to climb, down there and take a picture of
Yeah.
it, and it's nonsense for them to have to keep climbing up and down. A lot of the people are older, so they send it in once a year, and I just bill, make sure that they meet, the minimum, which right here, if they don't supply anything, is $525, but if they do supply the reading,
It's accurate.
it
It's
could
paid.
be, it could be less, and I just make sure that they meet the minimum. So this year, the minimum was $55 for the first 2 quarters, cause that was the rate last year, and then 2 quarters were at 70, so the minimum that anyone got billed was, 140 plus 110 was 250. But if you were a low level user and you don't send me anything, I have nothing to work with, I have to charge you $525.
Right. No, I understand that.
Yeah, so that's kind of where it works, but there are 3 people that don't respond. There were 4, one of them responded this year, and I kinda knew this was happening, and when he responded and got his bill, he was like, geez, that's what I get.
He's not responding again.
Right? So next year, he probably won't unless he sees that it's $1,000, then he'll say, well, maybe I'll respond.
Again, you're recommending increasing it to $1,000.
That's what I'm asking for, yeah,
How much?
1,000.
$1,000, it's really just to,
Make sure that they're being honest,
should-
because
you're right.
realistically, they take the picture, they'll be down below $1,000, most likely.
most likely, yeah,
Most likely.
There's no way to guarantee that, but most
Right.
likely.
most likely.
So they do a reading after they send $1,000. Do they get rebate on that?
Well, you know what, Walter, no one's ever done that, so,
They probably would, they
I
would be
suppose I would have to-
proactively probably do their reading.
Probably,
but I-
probably
They
call us
know
what I
that.
need to do.
Yeah.
If there's gonna be a policy, she would end up sending a notice out saying to these well water that this is what is going to be in effect. And I would assume these people, just like that gentleman did where it was $725.
Right.
what I think will
Yeah.
happen is they'll probably call for an abatement, and then I'll just be in front of you asking for an
Right.
abatement.
We have these 3 people a year from now coming for an abatement.
So it's circular, this is great.
I missed the deadline, but I didn't use that much, so it'll probably be that type of thing.
You're gonna, and you make a good point, Mike, cause you are gonna be, adding policies, like, as you move along too.
But like again, it's like you can't run before you walk too. So I don't wanna. So
These are some smaller things that have just
Yep.
been hanging on for a
no,
while.
no, that makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. Can we notify everyone in writing that what really the number the penalty is before we actually impose it? Correct, Robin, as you mentioned.
So she's not the, if I took
They
her,
know it because, in order for me to get the reading, I generate a letter
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
to all of them,
Yep.
and that information
Okay.
is in there.
Is in
So
there. Okay.
they have an informed choice whether they
Yep.
call me or not.
Nope, that's okay. Any other questions, discussion? I think we beat that one to death.
That's fine.
I'd entertain a motion by the board.
I'll make a motion to increase to $1,000.
I'll second it.
There's a motion seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Abatements. Sorry, for your time.
Thank you for that. Oh, and so now I'm moving on to abatements.
Yes, ma'am.
I sent out to the commission the overview of how we do abatements. There's some based on consumption that come through the water department. If there's something wrong with someone's meter, then we have to adjust. We can't charge more consumption than water. The other one is, we did have a program for pool meter abatements that I described that we're no longer honoring, and sprinkler system abatements that we no longer honor. We only have one person that we give a sprinkler abatement to, and that's because it's his own well water. And the policies were put in place to discourage use of water during water restrictive times. So I gave all of that to you, and now I have a couple of abatement requests. One is for 102 Josh Gray Road. Sorry, I just need a minute to re-familiarize myself. She had a very large bill. She had a silent leak of water after a pipe burst, so they came out. They took care of the burst pipe, but then they didn't realize there was a silent water leak in her, and the water accumulated in the crawl space. Did a lot of damage to the house. She gave me an invoice from the plumber. It was documented by the water department. And I have a history of her usage, so her usage for the last three timeframes, the cyclical timeframes, she went from like 1,700, 1,400, and 1,300 up to 10,655. So if I average out those three cyclical events, her average is 1,458 in consumption versus the 10,655. If I apply the current rate, the abatement would be $824.94, which would bring her bill down to $148.81, which is in keeping with her normal average.
Makes perfect sense.
That makes sense to me. Make a motion? Allow the abatement?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That's a vote.
Okay. The next one, a lot of these don't come in front of you because if I do speak to people and I explain to them what the parameters are for applying for an abatement, then they realize that, you know, if your toilet was running for 3 weeks and you can't really document that, you
Right.
didn't have someone come out and fix something, so they kind of go away. 66, so this is 25 Millbrook Drive. They received a high flow letter from the water department, which is a nice convenience that they do. If they notice that your bill is higher than usual, they'll send you a letter saying something's going on probably and you wanna investigate it. And they work with people, so they found that the flapper in the toilet was broken in their half bath. So this woman ordered a flapper online, she replaced it herself, it was an internal leak, so we did treat the water. So you would have to decide on that. She's 25 Millbrook Ave. And if you do approve the abatement amount would be $149.50, and that would bring her balance down to $263.18. She did give me a copy of the receipt that she ordered the part online, and she changed it herself. So other than that, I don't have documentation, but you can see that it was a toilet part that she ordered.
But at the end of the day, we also did treat all that water as well. This is not an empty cell type of system.
Correct.
I think that is the game changer here.
I would agree. I mean, it's an unfortunate event for her, and I do feel bad at the same time.
It is. I told her it could go either way. I told her that it was up to a vote, and I did tell her that we treated the water, but I would still bring her request forward.
I mean, I'm inclined not. I mean, if we've already treated the water, it's cost the town money to treat that water. It's hard for me to.
I don't disagree.
I'll agree with you.
I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion
Not
to
approve the abatement.
decline that abatement.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That's a vote.
That's it. And I don't have anything miscellaneous to mention. Thank you.
Thank you for everything. Superintendent update. Mr. Taylor.
Alright, just gonna go down the line here. So capital request, I know I talked briefly on that, a couple meetings ago. I did go into financing and capital planning. So besides the bigger item was at 21.5 that will go on to the special, articles for the town meeting. to coincide with the SRF, loan, which we talked about, which was part of the, Clean Water Revolving Fund. Okay, some of the smaller capital articles where we did a pump repair and replace, I did that a few years ago, so that just helps us as general pump repairs, we leave it broad, so if we end up coming up with a pump repair here,
Yep.
you know, they used to be, you know, 7 to 10,000, now, you know, Megan can attest that they're
25,000?
they're double that now, so we just wanna make sure we're keeping up with those. That could also be used out into the field on collections, you know, at one of our pump stations as well. The second article was for open drainage, so we're inclined to do some of these open areas. Again, we've talked about it briefly in the past. The stormwater, falls under the roads, falls under a closed loop system, which is managed by stormwater and highway, where the open has always been under the, purview of the sewer commission.
Yep.
So we have a number of articles coming up that have been priorities for the last few years. We're gonna start picking away at it. We have one on East Water Street.
Yep.
We have one on French Road. We have one on Rice Ave. And the fourth would be off of Hingham Street, which kind of abuts the backside of Old Country Way,
Okay.
all that. So the Hingham Street area is the 500s to 900 area.
Yep.
We have a lot of open drainage, flooding issues over there. So that's just to kind of allow additionally an article to kind of coincide with the drainage funding that we have as a regular budgetary item. Then we have a third one, which is general wastewater treatment plant upgrades. Another one we just left it broad, where we come into a number of items at the plant where this has to be repaired or that has to be repaired, and so we're not taking it from some of our, put it right now, we have that ARPA funding, we wanna make sure that is designated for our design.
Okay, that's right.
Right, and we're not taking away from those.
Yep.
So moving forward, this is probably gonna be an item that comes up. We started at 100, next year could be less, next year could be more.
Depending on what's
But-
left over.
Exactly, it goes right back into our funding.
Yep.
We just want that to coincide with some of our general upgrades. This could be anything, be any electrical, skater, anything that we feel we're running into an issue of one of our tanks where it needs a seal right now.
Right.
You know, we have to come up with that, so we wanna make sure we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yep.
And that's what these funds would be for.
Slush fund, if you will, just to keep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Our regular budgetaries, I know we talked about this, so just a few things got moved around as regular, budget items. One of them, we did go up on the superintendent's salary to 120. We just added to try to make it a little bit more attractive. Hopefully we'll get a qualified candidate, looking for somebody that's already been a superintendent or assistant superintendent that's looking to get that jump. So you have somebody that's gonna be qualified, come in and be turnkey, has, wastewater.
Licenses.
Right, has licenses, and licenses are important, but I'll be honest, you have a contractor here, they all have all that licensure. You don't need an engineer, you need a manager, you need
Okay.
somebody that has collection experience, somebody that can do procurement and do manager, and then work with our subcontractor here.
Okay.
So keep in mind, we do not have a collections department right now, so all that is subcontracted out, so we wanna make sure somebody can build up a rapport with subcontractors and have that work subcontracted out on collections,
Okay.
alright? So that, we upgraded that to a little bit. The senior clerk had to be up, cause we just wanna make sure we have enough funding for that per contractual. The same thing with, the salary of the administrative assistant. Some of the other items would be computer services, we went up a little bit. We did drop down on legal services, so we don't feel moving forward, we went back, reverted back 2 or 3 years ago, so that went from 15 to 5. That's just even where we are right now, so we haven't been using the legal services as much as what they have in the past. R&M, we did go up to 300, because we are running into a lot of collection issues. We wanna make sure we're keeping up with the maintenance of the collections. We did start that in the fall, early winter, where we were going out trying to maintain, where we talked about jetting and vacuuming some of these main lines. We wanna make sure that maintenance program is carried forward.
Right.
So we are allotting, we're taking earmarks from this, 50,000 of that is just for that.
Okay.
So, and we will start that program back up in the spring, we still have funding put aside for that. We just ran out of time where it just got cold.
Yeah, no,
Cause that work has to be done at night, which we talked about in the past.
you can't be using general water in the below, 20 below zero.
Right. And that's essentially the only really budgetary items.
Would it, he just said you going back to capital, I imagine all of our capital is funded through enterprise. Or do we?
Yeah, it's all through your budget,
That's what,
you know,
okay.
where it's a little
Yep.
differently than most other
Yep.
departments.
Okay.
You know, you're funding these articles by your revenues that are coming in,
Right.
okay?
Yeah, like, and the only other thing, I mean, we have, I mean, like a little bit of time, but with regards to, the proposed wastewater treatment plant upgrades, I think,
Mhm.
like, as we plan forward to town meeting, I do think, you know, like, and we can like talk more about this at our March meeting, but I think some type of public education, you know, a component to really, you know, because I mean, I would say when you just read a warrant article proposed for $21.5 million, you know, you might get a little bit of, you know, like sticker shock.
Right.
You know, but like if we really do a good job kind of breaking that down in advance, you know, explain that, you know, this is really part of a plan, a strategy that's been backed up by great analyses, you know, to fund that capital and everything else. You know, like I think breaking that down well in advance of town meeting could be helpful. And yeah, like maybe like at next month's meeting we talk about as a commission about how exactly we can, you know, we can do that and have a strategy to do that in advance of town meeting. I think could be
I
helpful.
would agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
And keep in mind, you wanna put out, like what we talked about, those rate increases that were already incorporated into
Yep.
that.
Yep.
That is part of the, you know, it's gonna pay for that SRF loan.
Right.
So you're gonna be working off of those receipts.
Yep.
And the revenues that you're taking in to pay for those wastewater treatment plant upgrades.
Yeah.
And also keep in mind, this is just, that 21.5 is just to appropriate that money.
Yep.
So we can go back to, you know, DEP, say, listen, we have that funding.
Well,
You're not gonna be, those funds are not gonna be even used till the end of 2026, 2027.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So,
and again, the other question with regard to the SRF phase,
Mhm.
you know, there's always the potential with the SRF that the loan actually could eventually become a grant,
Yeah.
hopefully as well.
yeah.
You know, but like I think those are a lot of the things that just, you know, that this has been part of a plan, that this was part of a comprehensive analysis, you know, that our rate structure is now built on, and for very good reason.
Mhm.
I think to get that out and to make sure that's very publicly understood, I think will be
Right,
helpful.
I mean, this
as
goes
we go
back a
forward.
few years ago
Yep.
for the rate structure. Walter, you were here when that was going on, and, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, and then it's just upgraded on with the wastewater treatment plant upgrade
In the
needs.
progress, yeah.
Right,
At the end of the day, I mean, give people an education so they know what they're voting on.
Yeah.
It should never be a bad thing.
it's significant, you saw what Wright Pierce projected as the project scope for the first phase is $35 million.
Right.
Right,
And I would argue we also dealt with and are dealing with the cost of deferred maintenance as well, so.
I would agree.
But I just wanted to
No, I think,
Yeah.
say that.
with the agenda for March, I think that's a good idea.
That's all I got, sorry.
No, no worries. So I'm just gonna go over the RFQ with the OPM.
Sure.
You know, just touch
Yep.
base on it a little bit, so you guys
Yep.
know what's going on with that. The proposals were due, by February 26th, which was yesterday. We had four companies that are bid documents. One of those hard copies will be for the initial review team that we discussed. On that review team would be myself, Megan from Veolia, Courtney Beauregard, the assistant town administrator, Allison Quinn, town planner, and Mike Mullen. Each member will do an initial review of that proposal, and, you know, we'll go through it. After each member's initial review, the team will individually score all of them on how the criteria, how they rank. We'll come up with the 3 top ranked firms out of the 4, and then recommend that to the Board of Sewer Commissioners. And then, at an open session of the sewer board. The initial review team should also come up some sort of references of the top 3 ranked firms to confirm they would be acceptable to do that type of work. Again, you could get, some very good engineering companies, but may not have wastewater treatment plant upgrade abilities or, past referrals.
Right.
So we're gonna leave that up to the sewer commission. There will be some public interviews on the 3 ranked firms that you come up with the team. The commission should decide on the ranking of the 3 firms. Sewer commission will then vote to delegate the interim sewer superintendent the authority to contact the top ranked firm after you make a decision, or the team does. Begin fee negotiations, then to execute a final contract. Again, the fee negotiations will be part of the regular procurement team that is up at the town hall. You'd be dealing with Scott Curtis to make sure, obviously the funding is in place for to pay the firm, which we do as part of the initial ARPA funding on that. And also what we're allotting from again, you made reference on the enterprise funds on our revenues coming in. It's basically, from what my understanding is on that, on the fee, it's basically a percentage of the total project. Is
Right.
what it is. So you're gonna have somebody on here from the start, which is why we Kevin Olson made reference to where we kind of pulled back a little bit, cause, I'm not a wastewater treatment plant upgrade expert by any means, so I was not comfortable making some of the decisions, even on the preliminary design and some of the final design aspects. So we've had them gear that back, which we talked to in the past. Time ratio is back probably about 6 months, which we wanna make sure we have a qualified OPM to help us with the discussions in some of these.
Agreed.
Right, so that's where we are with that. That's why, Kevin kind of made reference of that. We are behind on that, but we're not behind on the funding aspects of it, which is the important part of it.
Okay.
Once we finalize the language and we agree on the fee schedule for the person or the firm, and the people part of it, the contract will be executed. The OPM will attend the next sewer department commission meeting, and we'll have a kickoff project with the commissioners, Wright Pierce, and anyone else is involved. So, any questions on the OPM and
Yeah, just actually thinking about the evaluation process, and then bringing the top ranked proposals to the commission. Obviously we've talked a lot about timing. I'm thinking through my head, like if we're at the end of February now, like we meet your next regular meeting is at the end of March. There could be a question if we get through. And I'm just actually thinking about this and bringing this up for the first time, but if we get through the evaluation pretty quickly, maybe, and it's a big hypothetical that I'm just talking through, maybe we could entertain a special meeting to maybe have interviews, like maybe, what I'm saying is I think we could entertain sometime in the next 2 months special meeting, because if we only limit ourselves to the once a month meetings, we could potentially say hypothetically we take the next month to do this. Then we interview everyone at the end of March, and then a month later we come back. For anything else, there might be the need to have a special meeting depending on how this process rolls out. We're at the infancy.
Yeah.
I'm just raising that as
I'll make myself available.
keep in mind, you have four firms that put in the bid docs.
Yeah.
And we wanna round that down to 3, so you could have an engineering company that has no wastewater treatment plant upgrade experience at all.
Yep.
It's gonna make it fairly easy for you to get to your top 3.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So.
So, and then you'll wanna set up those interviews, staggered interviews for, we could set something up, whether it's here or at another facility at WRPS. We could do that, and that'll be up to whatever the board would like to do. the pleasure of the board.
Works for me.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, David.
Miscellaneous, I just have just a few items, and I know I'm gonna probably be redundant because I wanna touch on these items every time we have a meeting,
Yep.
and some things will drop off, and some things won't. So the generator project is coming to an end, we have some punch list items. We're still working out some of the credits and the debits, cause there's been some things that were modified where the town will be accredited for some of those things, and then there was also some pushback on some of the, you know, like we talked about some of the generator where, you know, where it was some of the components weren't working properly, and we're going back to CAT. Again, we touched base on the dynamic where, the board bought the, you know, the generator, and it wasn't really part of the full scope, so it's a he said, she said between, you know, you essentially had an OPM Wright Pierce, you had an electrical contractor, and you also had somebody that provided the generator, so, moving forward, we talked about if we put out a project of that scope, you could put the whole project out as one,
That's one, so that.
as one, then, you know, you don't
You have
come
to worry
into
about
these
any of
issues.
the pieces, you have to worry about.
Right, so essentially that's it, I mean, I'll let Megan, you know, she'll touch base a little bit on the generator if you could on, when we get to, you know, your part, but, I mean, I think it's fired up, everything's been pretty good, I think they fixed the last of the insulation on the exhaust. The only thing I had a request for is maybe some modifications on the hangar, on some of the piping going up to the roof, where I thought it should be beefed up a little bit more. We had an impartial company come in and just kinda go through it with us, so we've reached out to Wright Pierce and Adams handling that
Okay.
issue there. We haven't had any issues with the generator after the last startup, right?
No,
Okay.
no.
So, and then there's a couple, some of the miscellaneous items, or a couple pumps being, like, that's why we put in our capital article for pumps, we have a couple pumps that are gonna be replaced. Again, that's coming out of areas where we, you know, we have money, but we need to use that money in other aspects, whether it's out in collections or at the plant, so again, that's why we're putting those articles in. We just upgraded the technology in the conference room, so, we're just trying to be proactive on that, because when you do have an OPM, an RFQ, the qualifications, once you pick that person, most of the time, he's not gonna be at the plant.
Correct.
So you're gonna need to have, you know, we upgraded it so we could literally have a meeting here, where you could have day meetings and, you know, it'll be via Zoom, most of them, and they'll be recorded, and, so we wanted to make sure that was already preset, you know, as you get your OPM in, and you're gonna be dealing with engineering companies, Wright Pierce, you know, you got your, you know, Weston Sampson, Veolia will be involved, so there's gonna be a lot of meetings there. So we wanna make sure everything is ready to go. We're doing some parking reconfigurations in the front to meet some of the ADA guidelines. That's coming up, I know I talked to Megan about it. We're gonna have some, you know, parking things moved around here for visiting park, and also to accommodate some of the meetings. ADA is gonna be moved, so we have those accommodations being done over the next month, so that'll be done. We've got some new storage containers coming into the back of the facility where, they used to have the Godwin pumps under a shelter. That shelter is kind of failing right now. We have this significant, with the Godwin pumps, I mean, they're expensive, so we wanna make sure, you know,
Protected.
we're protected. We're maintaining, those are going up for maintenance, come in, they're gonna have their own storage container moving forward. We'll be adding another storage container for like, safety equipment, you know, collection work we're gonna be doing, you know, road signage, a lot of that we'll have to provide, you know, for some I&I work, general I&I work.
Okay.
So we're providing for that. We're doing an archive, Robin just ordered some shelving we're gonna set up an archive room in the back where we're trying to move some of the archives here, some of the archives in John Laughlin's old office, and move those into the back where they'll be easily accessible. So when somebody does step in here, it's not gonna be overwhelming, have 100 different files from 1972 to 86, which would be great to reference at some point, but we don't need them out here. We'll be looking at the front entranceway is gonna be kinda redone as well, cause some of the gates are failing. And then it's kinda coincides with the highway project, we have a curb walk project, we've had a number of people that can't access the ADA ramps, so we're gonna upgrade the ADA ramps, which doesn't have anything to do with sewer, but that will be over the highway purview, and then when it comes over to here, we're gonna dress up, kinda clean up the entrance to the facility and upgrade the gate at that point too. Also some lighting as well, where we're working on some lighting issues here. If you look out, it's not very well lit, and it is a wastewater treatment plant, and some of the, we need to make sure that security-wise, we have it lit up at night. So, it's just some of the few things that we're doing. We're starting, plant inventory next week. That hasn't been done in a few years, so I'll be doing that myself. And on Saturdays, doing the plant inventory and town-owned property, so we have a general inventory, and also what the fall-off ratio is for maybe even like a Godwin pump or some other tools, and so at least we have that set for capital expenditures and budgetary items moving forward. So that's wastewater treatment plant miscellaneous, and then I have field and collections miscellaneous. So I do, when we did talk to Chris Kenny, I know we made reference to, so one of the bigger items was the EPA wants to see us be more proactive in moving forward with rehabilitation work. So I know I also made reference to the Weston and Sampson has a rehabilitation contract going up for us in March. So we have that contract signed, they're proactive, we're going after 119,000 gallons that were identified. And we'll be going after that rehabilitation work. Some of those are gonna be metered, additional metered areas, so we can come up with the next round of rehabilitation. And then a lot of that is everything that's been identified, you know. So we're gonna, that 119, and once that is done, we'll be going after another 114,000 gallons. So significant, and again, I also, we brought up that we have a little under $1 million already put aside for that, whether it was some old I&I funding and even, old projects, and that's what we've committed. Some ARPA funding was also committed to that, so we do have a little under $1 million committed to that, which that'll be part of the next semi-annual report that's due in May. That'll be on the report that this is where we're moving forward. These are the fees collected, these are what the fees are going to be used for, which was brought up by the EPA in the past, on the past report. That's how they wanna see if we're collecting that I&I funding, where are we using it, what account are we using, where is it going, and how are these funds being used?
They wanna see it go from start to finish, to make sure it's doing the right thing.
Exactly. So on that, Robin and I have been working fairly diligently, even on some of the smaller ones, Dave. The boards and the commission have allowed, small hookups, whether it be, I'm at, a residence adding another bedroom and staying under the 440. They had three bedrooms or adding another one. So we wanna make sure we are attaching I&I fees for that. There's really no development fees, cause it is a residence. There's no hookup fees, cause they already have the hookup. But we gotta make sure there are I&I fees attached to that, even adding that one bedroom. Cause if you're adding 20 bedrooms, it's, you know what I mean? You're at 20,000, you're at 20, you know what I mean?
Okay.
It's 110 times 20 bedrooms, so
Right.
it's significant. It's a small apartment building, so you need to make sure we're allowing for that. We are earmarking, so if you get those, even that at 1101, you get that funding, those will be used for even just rebuilds of sewer manholes, and that is a DEP credit. It's allowed to you by the DEP. It's a one-time credit per year. It's at between 1,000 and 1,500 gallons, so we could use that to offset rebuilding sewer manholes.
Okay.
So it's not a day, it's a year. So, but that one-time allotment is where we're going to use that funding moving forward. So it just makes sense if you collected minimally 1,100, which was been in the past, that fee is probably going to have to go up to accommodate the moratorium, and that will be enough to at least get that one-time I&I credit for that, which will be ongoing per year.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's just not that day, gallons per day. So
I mean, not to back that, but then that brings full circle the EDU conversation as well,
It's exactly.
with whether it's attached, detached, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're gonna have to, and it's good because a lot of other towns are already moving on it.
Yep.
So you can literally pull off what they're doing, like sometimes the Board of Health, where that goes over from Title V into hookups. I mean, you're gonna have to, and it's gonna be dependent on where it is and the topography of the land. You could have somebody that has a gravity-fed sewer connection right now, say you're on Summer Street, gravity-fed out to Summer Street, but their topography in their backyard drops off, and that ADU is actually gonna be lower than the invert coming out. They may need to add a grinder unit to pump up, and then where are they pumping? Are you gonna allow them to cut into a 24-inch pipe? Probably not, so you'll probably have to install an inline or a change in direction manhole before that comes out to the street. So there's a lot of parameters that are gonna have to be set, when you get into that. And again, you know, it's gonna be up for discussion. You're gonna have to set a policy, and again, other towns are, Bob made reference to the other towns that are doing it. You're gonna have to use some cheat sheets and then try to come up with a scenario. Right, because again, if you're allowing even some of these smaller ones, and you get a big complex that wants to hook up, like you can't differentiate from the smaller to the big.
Right.
But you can say, well, per gallons, and you could use that 440, and then over that, you can install those I&I fees, fees.
There's a question about like what type of a connection. I mean, like, is it a completely like new connection where you tap them in?
It's
Or-
it's gonna
So
be
I'm sorry to
up
hijack.
for
Yeah.
discussion. Again, you're gonna be looking, but you're gonna need to set all these parameters beforehand, so
To be
it's,
consistent.
right, to be
That's-
consistent.
Be transparent and consistent.
Exactly.
Okay.
Cause you're gonna run into it, like you're
Right.
gonna run into some weird, like I said,
After
it could be,
440 is a one fee, then after 440 is so much per.
right,
Well, I don't, right.
and it's,
These are for discussion.
and it's gonna be dependent too, cause like you could say, it's right here on Concord Street, you have a 30-inch pipe on Concord Street, you don't want people, cutting into that pipe, do you know what I mean? So you might have to, see where that pipe is, the age of the pipe, that 30-inch pipe is an old pipe on Concord Street. It's literally one of the areas where we're gonna set up a meter on. It's gonna start from Summer Street in, and we're gonna keep bouncing that meter out to see what we have for I&I. So that's one of those areas. So
Right.
there's gonna be a lot, and you're gonna need to, again, it's one of those policies you wanna be out in front of before it hits, because it's here. It's
Right.
here now. And you can't, you're not gonna be able to differentiate between an ADA, an ADU, and somebody that's out in the bedroom or two for an in-law, or, you know what I mean? So, and that has been going on, those hookups have been, where they, for the last few years, so it's nothing new.
So does the homeowner have to pay for that?
For which part?
Well, say if you run into the problem where you need a grinder pump
Yes,
put in,
yeah, I mean, it's
all
part
this
of,
has to be
yeah.
estimated before any work is started,
correct,
obviously.
But if we're telling them though that they can't we can't cut into the pipe, are they responsible for that manhole cover and everything else that goes with it?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah, it would be almost considered like a development, like look at 320 Concord Street, when that was approved a few years ago. That was one of the parameters for them was to have a grinder pump, because you have a 30-inch old pipe on Concord Street. They have to do a change in direction manhole, and that was originally shared with another property, so they would have to either add another manhole before it comes to the street. And they will also have to maintain all that. So it's not a maintenance issue for the town,
Right.
which it shouldn't be. Again, that's why we ask like Holy Family apartments, they have to do a grinder pump. And the maintenance on that grinder pump, especially for an elderly facility, the maintenance on that grinder pump will be part of that, part of their fees, for them.
Right.
And maintenance on that would be them. So we ran into a lot of those issues back in 2020 with the COVID issues and the wipes and the cleaning wipes, and everything was getting, Megan can attest to the plant at that point, going into the grit chamber, and, it was crazy. So, I didn't mean to digress,
No,
but
it's
that's
fine.
where we are
Yes.
with
It is
the,
my fault I brought up.
Yeah,
the
no,
issue.
where we
We
are.
want this information,
I'm
that's what we're here
blaming-
for.
Commissioner Mullin
I
for
understand.
that. So there are some collection projects, I know I touched base on that Center Ave project, that is, so we already have all that set, we'll be looking for contractors, we'll bid that out come late spring, summer. That is a 12 sewer manhole projects have been on the list for a few years now. That'll have to be done at night. It's significant against you will get some credits for that through the DEP on that. We'll be working with Mass Highway on that, for that's MassDOT, essentially coinciding with them. And again, I know we talked about the maintenance of the sewer lines. We'll be starting that back up late spring, summer, and that is something, that's why we increased the R&M budget to accommodate for that. Minimally, we're gonna spend $50,000 out of the R&M budget for that a year.
Yep.
You know, and we're gonna hit some of these problem lines and keep up with them. Cause a lot of our older lines, like Hingham Street, they flat line, you're dealing with, you got hotels, there's grease issues we've been trying to modify, so a lot of that is coming up. Lastly, on miscellaneous, we had a homeowner at 52 Gardner Street, and that's in 52 Gardner Street, so we provided, so it's a weird dynamic, because this person lives in Hingham, right over the line. But we have, how many other people are tied in up there? Is there three? Three other Hingham residents are on the end of our sewer line there.
Right.
Already tied in. This person, the resident, did do the sewer stub hookup and brought it in from the road and had it onto her property. She has 4 bedrooms?
She has
She has
3
3,
and she's
she's adding
adding
4.
1.
So she's asking for a permit to connect, and also, so I just bringing it up to the sewer commission board. Again, it's weird, because we do have the sewer line there, but it also is, she's from Hingham. She's an elderly woman, her husband, they're adding an ADA accessible ramp for him to get in and out of, but we've come up with a fee schedule for that. And then this is just preliminary, I just want you to know that I'm bringing it up, and then we're gonna talk about it probably a little bit more lengthy on the next meeting. And so, but I wanted you to at least get the discussion going, so you know that's gonna be coming up. She asked for me to bring it up, and it will be on the agenda for the next meeting as well. So just so you have that.
David, in the meantime, potentially it turns into a definitional legal question. Is it actually a new connection? Like they have the stub, but the stub is not hooked up, and anyone on any street could have anyone on any street could have like a stub. And how would we treat that at the time? Is it a new connection?
It's a new connection.
So
Yeah. So she has paid for the stub.
Yep.
But it will be treated as a new connection. There would have to be I&I fees involved with this. You would have to make,
But that gets to where the place in line and the whole question. So.
right.
Okay.
So it's gonna be something you're gonna have to think about, and
Like I said, we're gonna have to be consistent, cause this is gonna be an ongoing issue.
again, yes,
Not necessarily with
yeah,
it being a Hingham,
No,
but just in general.
yeah.
Regardless of, I don't want to say regardless of where it is.
No,
but
agreed.
it's-
You do have 3 other residents from Hingham hooked up to it. She did pay for the sewer stuff.
Yep.
There will be I&I fees connected to this, and they're significant. So, but she's at the point where she would have to put a new septic system in,
Right,
which is probably double what the fees would be.
right.
So, she's looking at that.
Right.
She's 80-something years old, so. I don't know where that's coming from. Is that you?
I think so.
I was enjoying the interlude. Kind of broke up from your talks.
Intermission.
So, that's essentially what I got, so I'm gonna present it
Next month.
next month, I just wanted, do we have anything else, Ron? I think that was essentially it.
No, the last thing you had was your inspections that you did.
Yeah, so, oh yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, so the last thing was inspections, thanks, Ron. So the only ongoing projects we have right now are Dyer Street and also Concord Meadows, which is, Pat Rose Way, so we just, they've been calling up for inspections. Dyer Street was pressure tested, Pat Rose Ways are all singles, their whole system was pressure tested, so we have all the results for that, so. The only other one that was, they did a initial pressure testing at Radcorp for that new building that they have
Oh.
over there.
Yes.
Yeah, so and that pressure test failed, so they have to redo
On Pleasant Street
sewer
or
manual.
whatever.
What is it?
On Pleasant Street over there?
Yeah, it's not really Pleasant, so they can't access Pleasant Street. That was part of the stipulations. That's only
Oh.
for if there was an emergency in the firehouse to get a larger
Okay,
apparatus
okay.
towards the back of the building.
Right.
It's the only reason why there's gonna be an accessible
Okay.
gate there. They're not allowed to access Pleasant Street
Okay.
from their facility. We're not opening up that can of worms, so,
Okay.
yeah. That's essentially what I got.
Thank you, Dave.
That's a lot. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Megan?
Hi.
Right.
Last month, I'm gonna go over the numbers from
Yeah,
last
please.
month. We had 66 million gallons come through the plant. That was an average, daily average of 2.1. We totaled 1.6 inches of rain. We ended up processing 522,000 gallons, producing 138 wet tons of sludge hauled from this facility, which is really good. I also wanted to go back to the flow. I just previously looked, and we are at an average of 2.3 so far, so we're still not over for the month, so I'm really happy. Any maintenance that was done last month, actually this month, we ended up, the return activated sludge number 3 pump, we ended up picking up from, the contractor we ended up going to, can't remember. Blanchard, thank you. I just remembered electric and I can't remember the first name. We had that built, rebuilt, and we picked that up. We just have to install it, so once that gets installed, we'll have all 3 pumps back there. And then the other one was our wash press, which is, it derags the water that comes in, or the rags. It's, our bearing seal broke, so we ended up fixing that on the motor, so that's good to go. And that's all I got. The generator, everything's working fine.
Thank
No
you for-
issues. We test it on a weekly basis. We're supposed to anyways.
Yep.
So we do, no load once a week and then.
Load once a month, right?
Yep, once a month, so. all-
Thank you for
all
everything
good.
on that whole project and
Yeah,
everything.
welcome.
Any questions for
No.
Megan? Okay. Just a quick discussion about future upcoming meetings. We talked about the potential for a special meeting. Yeah, we can reach out if and when needed, well in advance, so everyone that can plan. As we talked about last month, we went from Tuesdays, and then trying to go to the last Tuesday of the month. Now we're on the last Thursday of the month as a one-off, and then from here, I believe we agreed that going forward, beginning in March, we will have a regular meeting the 4th Monday of every month. I just want to confirm that everyone's on the same page because we've kind of been on a roller coaster there, but that works for.
March,
That would be the 24th.
24th.
Okay, I have something to say about that.
Okay, please.
We try to do the billing on the 25th, so if we have the meeting on the 24th, I'll be asking you to approve that rate increase of 10%, or if you need to do some kind of research before then, to figure out if the 10% is enough or not. It would need to happen then, so that you could vote on the 24th at your meeting, so that I could update the bills on the 25th when we do the billing. I mean,
The billing's always on the 25th-ish, so then, if we're looking at that, do you wanna make the third, I'm asking, do you wanna make the third Monday of the month? Make sure we never run into that issue.
it's 10% this year, but I know last year we revisited the 10% and we did some analysis to see if it was enough, and what we decided to do was, I asked for the senior discount, so that was like $3, and we added that on to the basic user rate, and then Chuck, I can't remember, Chuck Hessian was the chairman, he needed the $5 for another project, which I can't recall offhand, so we increased, instead of going above and beyond with the 10%, we did the basic user increase from 10 to 18.
Oh, the basic user rate.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we kept the regular user rate at 10%. Which is, that's recommended for this year as well from Weston and Sampson, but I don't know if we've done any analysis so far on the revenue compared to the budget for next year to see if that's enough.
And that rate actually has to be set by March 25th.
Only if you, well, you would vote for the increase that would take place on July
Right,
1st,
it'd be 4 months ahead.
but you would be voting for it just so I can put a notice onto the bill. I mean, in many ways, everyone kinda knows the 10% is coming at them.
Yep.
And they've gotten rate increases before without the courtesy of having that on, but if we can,
I know, I agree completely. I guess last year, yeah, I'm just trying to, I guess, recognize where we came from. So last year there was a 10% recommendation too, but you're saying that, like in some instances there were different offsets,
right,
and then one went up to 18%.
nope,
Oh, sorry.
there's a $10 flat user quarterly fee
Okay,
for
yep,
basic
yep.
user rate.
Okay,
We increased that from $10 to $18.
okay.
And part of that offset the senior discount, and I can't remember what the other $5
You know what we can
offset
do
was.
too, is we can send out a memo explaining exactly what Robin's referring to, so you
Okay.
guys can see it
Okay.
on how it was applied last year.
Okay.
You
You
know
know,
what
that'd
I
be
mean?
good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we have a
like,
clear understanding,
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
do you know what I mean?
I mean, and like, and just in terms of where we came from with Weston Sampson with the rate analysis
Yeah.
and where we're going and what we have to fund, both in operating and the capital. I mean, like, does it make sense between now and then, as long as we have an existing contract with Weston Sampson to do so, to give them updated budget numbers and to just confirm with them that where we are is where we anticipated to go and everything reconciles out?
Well, we're just trying to make sure if there is a fluctuation, we have to,
Time to manage it, yeah.
the 10% is gonna be 10%.
Yep.
But again, you could come back
Just with the
to,
fee.
yes,
Yeah, the basic, so the consumption rate right now is $8.97 per 100 cubic feet. And the recommendation from Weston and Sampson is to raise that 10% this year. So, which is approximately $1,
right,
almost $1,
90 cents.
96 cents or something.
I mean, again, my general take is, I mean, we have a huge capital plan that we need to fund. 2 rates. And we have a recognized interlude.
I'm sorry.
And we have can we have a recognized, bought into, adopted way to do it? Yeah, deviating from that at this point would just, like we shouldn't deviate from that.
Right, well, your 10% is gonna be set, the only other thing that could be is you could modify,
Well,
the basic
it
user.
wasn't
My-
really even cast in stone for the
Right.
10%, because we did revisit it last year to make sure that it
it
was
was gonna be enough to
accurate,
cover it.
because things change.
Yeah.
And I think we did have Weston and Sampson revisit it.
Okay.
They are,
Okay,
They will.
perfect.
yeah.
Okay, perfect. Like, I think we're all saying the same exact thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, perfect. Okay. And that'll be on the agenda for next meeting.
Yep.
March 25th.
24th,
Fourth.
24th.
Monday.
Sure,
Giving
Mike.
up. Thank you. Alright,
Monday, March 24th.
You will have Weston and Sampson on that meeting as well, going over the I&I.
perfect. My wife just asked me. I was dying because I told her an hour ago I'd be home 20 minutes ago. Okay. Okay. Anything else anyone has?
Nothing.
Okay. With hearing none, seeing none, I entertain motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
7:58.
Second?
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.